Good evening, everyone. It is right at 6 o'clock, and I am ready to get started. I hope all of you are as well. Good evening, South High School families. My name is Matthew Swinson, and I'm the very proud principal of Valley Stream South High School. I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedules to be a part of this informative session. Your attendance tonight reflects that you are committed to becoming a partner with South High School and all the adults who are doing amazing things with your children and soon will be coming Wednesday, September 3rd, 2025. It also is a reflection where you state loud and clear that you are an advocate of your son and or your daughter, and you're looking to partner with the school to support your child on this journey. Let me first start by saying we realize that this is going to be a tremendous shift for everyone involved, for our 7 through 12 students and their families. Um, Schools have not taken on this kind of role in a really long time. Hopefully you were a part of this informative session back on August 9th. If you are a second timer, fantastic. If you are a first timer, amazing, because we know that we were going to run this two different occasions so that we would allow families the flexibility, especially as it relates to bringing closure to the summer and some people being away and some people being home. The origin story behind our policy starts with New York State Ed Law 2803, which has gone into effect for the start of the 25-26 school year, where New York State Ed Law states that there will be a ban student use of internet-enabled devices during the instructional day. It's going to apply to all public schools, charter schools, and BOCES. And of course, there has to be a system of checks and balances. So at the end of the school year, we will report our findings and our data to the state. Please also know that this policy went into effect just last month, July 2025. So as an educator and as a parent, I, and hopefully you, am all too familiar with how this law aims to eliminate the use of smartphones, smartwatches, and other internet-enabled devices that can disrupt learning. It has been a struggle over the years for teachers to kind of like juggle their ability to deliver impactful learning and then also referee students pulling out cell phones or other electronic devices that can potentially interrupt and impact teaching and learning. So by removing these distractions, students can better focus on instruction and classroom engagement. Essentially, this is going to promote equity because all students will use school-issued devices for their educational purposes. We're going to ensure that consistent access to learning tools and minimizing disparities caused by personal device differences. So in other words, students will only be able to use their school-issued devices. Additionally, we're talking about socially and emotionally protecting student well-being. The policy reflects the growing concerns about the impact of excessive screen time and social media on student mental health. And invariably, this always ends up inside of a school where various different adults, whether it is the school social worker, the school psychologist, the school counselor, the classroom teacher, and or administrators, we end up managing and kind of sort of sorting this out so that we can support the student, right? Very recently, there's been a book that was published within the last year. It turns out to be a New York Times bestseller. I typically don't plug books, but I want parents, if you have the opportunity, to please check in with this book. It's called The Anxious Generation and How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. It was written by Jonathan Haidt. And in this book, he speaks to how technology today, especially cell phones, they are causing social and sleep deprivation, attention fragmentation, and of course, screen addiction. So parents, if you are curious, this ban goes into effect Wednesday, September 3rd, and it includes all areas of school grounds, including the hallways, the cafeterias, the bathrooms, classrooms, and it's going to start at 7:50 through the end of ninth period, which is 2:43. And of course, this is very clear and consistent expectation for students and staff. And as I stated before, there's a process in which we will collect data throughout the course of the school year. We will be reporting this data to district office and sharing it amongst all the buildings in the district to compare. Just to give families an idea of what teachers are struggling with, take a look at this data that we were able to pull from the teachers. This will give you some insight into how frequently they are responding to how these phones are interrupting the work that they are doing. If you could just imagine what that looks like in a teacher's classroom, having to stop the work that they are doing to address how a cell phone is interrupting the work that they're doing and their goals and attention to delivering instruction. Specifically, here are the devices that this new state enacted law is going to impact. So it's all internet-enabled devices, including smartphones, smartwatches, tablets, earpods, headphones should also be in there, and any personal device capable of internet access. School-issued devices for instruction are allowed, and if you see there is the specialized word there, school-issued. Non-internet enabled devices are allowed, but specifically to speak to school-issued devices, if a student comes to school with, let's say, an iPad, they won't be allowed to use the iPad because it's not a school-issued device. So here is where and when the ban applies, as I stated earlier. Goes into effect at the beginning of the first day of school, 7:50 to 2:43. All areas of school grounds, including classrooms, hallways, cafeteria, gym, library, entrance, and bathrooms. We realize that your son or your daughter, your child will struggle with this. We have that kind of like built into the work that we're doing. And so just so that families are aware, if your child feels the need, anxious possibly, they are to communicate with the classroom teacher that they need to leave the classroom and go to the school nurse, go to their school counselor, and we will have a phone, or maybe even the assistant principal or principal's office. We will have a phone for them to reach out to mom, dad, or another guardian at home that they can connect with. And as you can see in the last two bullets, phones may be used off campus during free periods, but must be stored again upon returning to the building. And students may also not use the phones in the hallways when entering the building or returning. We have an expectation that students will store their devices in their locker. By now, we, especially South High School, have communicated this expectation going way back to January of 2025. And in my last number of weekly communications, I have shared with families through research and through links that they can access so they can start having that conversation with their child related to what is it going to look like upon their return to South High School with this cell phone ban being enacted. So hopefully families were able to access those documents over the last several months of the school year and took some pointers and some strategies out of there to engage their child about what it's going to look like coming back to a school building without having access to your cell phone. Families also know that we have the installation of new lockers in our building. We are doing away with the combination of these lockers, and students will get a new school issued ID, which is going to be unique to every student. And on the back of that school issued ID, Students will be able to just press the ID against their locker. There will be a barcode on the back of the school issued ID, which the locker will read and then open up. And it will be unique to just that student. And again, the expectation is that students will not carry their lockers because they'll have a safe place to store it, which will be in their brand new locker that they can store their cell phone in throughout the course of the day. There are some exceptions to this policy. So let's say there is a student in our building with an IEP or a 504. It's a plan that specifically states that they're allowed to have the device because it's in the language of their plan, and it's a health reason that they need to have their phone. Let's say if they have a phone that supports them in reading a blood sugar or diabetes level, well, then those are exceptions because that's for a health reason. And or in some classes, students with IEPs or 504, they'll have their device for uses related to learning in the classroom. As I stated earlier, here will be some opportunities for us to communicate during the day. For your son or your daughter, students can use the main office phone to contact families during free lunch periods. Parents or guardians, if there are some questions or concerns you have, you can call the main office to reach students and we will leave them a message. You can leave them a message and we will get that communication to your child. We will call them down as needed. Here is the number to the South High School office, which is 516-791-0310. There was tremendous amount of work coming out of district office led by Mr. Cliff Odell, the Board of Education, and South High School, in addition to all the central high schools. We are really appreciative of the work and the effort that went into communicating these documents and them sharing these documents with us so that we can share with our South High School families and throughout the entire Central High School District. My communication is the same as Dr. Small, as it is Ms. Hugie, as it is Mr. Strauss. We are all speaking the same language so that when we know students are communicating with each other across town, all of them are receiving the same messages. Okay, so again, we know that this is not going to be easy, but we have all sorts of stopgap measures put in place to support our students. Here's what we're looking for. We're looking for a cooperative and supportive approach, which will be instituted. We know that we're just not going to have an expectation that students are going to like cold turkey embrace this. It's going to be difficult, and we know that. Again, students are to put the phones away before entering school and store them in the lockers. To support students, we're going to have a stronger presence, a more visible presence. School administrators and security will have more of a presence in the hallway and throughout the school building. This entire process allows our teachers to focus more on teaching, and of course, the ultimate goal, students to focus more on their learning. How are we going to communicate this with shareholders and most importantly, the parents who are supporting us in this endeavor? Well, upon the first couple of days back to school in our assemblies, we will strongly communicate this with our students. On each period, the first couple of days where we have our grade level assemblies, we will be sharing this again with students, right? So that we provide them with any opportunity to ask questions to us. Students typically come up with some really good questions, but parents, I ask that the first couple of days, we want to get our sea legs under us, and we want to make sure, if you can, please engage your child and ask them how the first couple of days are going, because you might hear something that the school could have had a blind spot to. And by you sharing with us, we will then be able to kind of like revise some of the conversation we're having around communicating this with our students. Disciplinary consequences. I know that students are incredibly curious about Like, what will the consequences be? Um, here is what we are starting to have a conversation with about students. We, first of all, we hope that we're not consequencing students. We know that this is going to be a challenge, and in this entire process, we have grace, mercy, and consideration that's going to be built into understanding where our students are developmentally, so that kids understand we are approaching this with a sensitivity that's respectful and affirming to where our students are age and grade wise and developmentally. But I would like for parents to take a look at this. Um, Here's how it's going to play out. So students are found with their cell phones during the school hours. We're simply going to ask the student for the phone, and hopefully they'll hand it over to us. We're going to work through a progressive discipline model. As I stated before, the first engagement will be a confiscation where the student, and the confiscation will last the entire day or for the remainder of the day, where the student will most likely come to the main office to retrieve the phone. During the course of the day, the phone is stored in a safe, safe that no one can get into, not even the principal. But we will be able to get the phone for them by the end of the school day. Let's say a student does this a second time after we give the phone back to them. Again, it will be confiscated. At this time, a parent and or guardian will come to the school to retrieve it. A refusal to comply where a student says, no, I'm not giving you my phone. Well, we're going to have some additional consequences. And right now, as a district level administrative team, we're adding the final touches on what exactly is that going to look like. Clearly, we are not looking to engage any students in any conflict. I engaged the football team and the cheer team, a few students from the cheer team yesterday, and they had come up with a couple of questions. And a couple of the students said, well, what if we don't give the phone in, right? So we're not looking to have any conflict with students. I think we've gotten out in front of this with a considerable amount of time where really we want students to say, I'm disagreeable to this new policy. It has nothing to do with the high school. This is coming from the infinite wisdom of New York State Educational Department, which probably all educators throughout the state of New York support. And we are going to follow through with this policy with our due diligence, because we believe in it and we believe that this is what is best for students. And I think in the long run, teachers are going to appreciate this so that they can get back into the rhythm and the tradition of teaching with as few distractions as possible. All we're asking for is our students to adhere to the rules and cooperate. Here are the procedures for confiscation. Let's say this takes place in the classroom. Simply, the teachers will just direct the student to hand the phone over to the teacher. Very quickly, the teacher will fill out a form. The teacher will submit the referral and contact home. In the hallway, the staff will request the name of the student and the grade, and that teacher will notify the assistant principal. Administration and or security will collect it if they are engaging the student. And again, we will store this phone in the main office safe. And again, the phones will be stored in the main office safe to be picked up at the end of the school day. As you can tell, as I stated earlier, the other buildings have had their meetings with their learning community, and tonight is South High School's turn to have that meeting with my learning community. So the language that I'm using tonight is the language that the learning communities from Central, Memorial, and North have already received. So if you know someone from any of those other buildings, you could possibly check in with them for consistency if you'd like, and to make sure that we are seriously committed to speaking and communicating to families throughout the Central High School District in the same way. Again, as I stated earlier, we know that this is going to be a difficult process for our grades 7 through 12 students. We are planning on instituting restorative processing circles so that we can engage our students to ask them, how are you feeling about this process? I got a little bit of a head start on this, and very recently I just returned from a conference in Seattle where I was working with administrators from different parts of the country, and they were a year in already with instituting this policy. And the reports that they have shared with me was that in the beginning, it was difficult, but as the school year progressed, students became more appreciative of this, parents became more appreciative of this entire process, and there was tremendous buy-in. And I'm talking about administrators that I connected with that were from Tennessee, Kentucky, Washington, Texas, um, South Carolina, Florida. So we get this. We know that this is going to be a huge paradigm shift for our students, but I believe we have all the mechanisms in place to support our students if and when they show struggle with this new process. Not only will we have restorative processing circles with our students, we also plan on having restorative processing circles with staff. Along the way, families can expect that we will provide for them workshops at probably PTSA meetings and parent club meetings. And we are also throughout the year provide them with resources as I have done in the past through our weekly communication. And as always, South High School promotes student voice, and all of our 1,258 students will have an opportunity to speak for themselves and use their voice to speak about how this new policy is impacting them. We appreciate and we look forward to hearing student voice. Parents, I'd like for you to spend a few seconds and kind of like taking a quick look at this. We know that parents have concerns, they have questions, and hopefully tonight, or if not tonight, another opportunity, parents can email and engage assistant principals, school counselors, and social workers if they have any parental concerns about the process or how their son or daughter is dealing and managing this new paradigm shift of electronic device expectation. Parents, you are the best knower of your child. Please, when you have the opportunity, if probably before school or the first day of school, if the emergency contact information has been changed, please make sure you send an email to your child's school counselor or to an administrator so that we can update our Infinite Campus information. Um, Again, another theme coming out of this is device management. Um, Communication alternatives. We know that parents over the years, it's been very easy and it's been very convenient for parents to just text their child and say, hey, listen, I don't know if you're aware of this, but a dental appointment has been switched to 4 o'clock. So we're going to have to get out of the school sooner than originally planned. Um, and we know that along the way, we want, again, as I mentioned before, we want students involved in this process and sharing with us how they are coping with this new shift. And we also are aware that this is going to bring on some possible anxiety and discomfort for students. And again, we have our school social workers, we have our school counselors, assistant principals, teachers. It's going to be an all hands on deck approach to responding to the needs of our child. We look forward to engaging your child. We look forward to supporting your child. We love your children, and we want to make sure that we are creating an environment that is a cell phone or electronic free environment so that the real focus can be on learning, teaching and learning. Here is what families can do should they feel the need to reach out to us, right? So obviously we will always promote family communication and that we have two-way communication. Um, Parent Square is another opportunity for us to use in communicating from the school to our learning community, what the expectations are. Possibly this could be a situation where we have these new rules and regulations around the cell phone where we can respond to students' mental health and their emotional security. We know that some students are going to think that the ban is unfair, and that's fine. That's just part of processing a new policy, a new rule that people are uncomfortable with. I often tell students, I have a heavy foot. And in some speed limits, some speed zones that I travel through, it says 55 and I want to do 70. And I can't because it's a law and it's a policy. However, if I do, there'll be a consequence to that. And I don't want that consequence. So I've got to discipline myself to the law. And we realize and understand that this can be a struggle, possibly will be a struggle for our students, but we have an all hands on deck approach to supporting our students in this new process. We are going to work hard throughout the course of the school year. This is not just a one-time message that we're going to communicate. We're going to communicate this message early and often, frequently, right? This is going to be all of our communication around this will be delivered to students in a timely fashion. And I know there's been some questions and some concerns about, will phones be allowed during lunch? No, they will not. Phones are not permitted to be used in school, even during non-instructional time. Students will have the laptops available to them during lunch, study halls, and or a free period. And here's how you can reach out to us. Should you feel the need, should there be an emergency that shows up and you need to communicate with your child? Parents know that the cell phones will be stored in brand new lockers. Can't be compromised unless your child shares their information with another student and literally hands their ID to their friend, which is a no-no. You're not allowed to do that. Students are prohibited from sharing their school ID with another student. There'll be a process instituted that if IDs are lost or stolen, students will have to report it immediately to the main office. We're hoping that this has been seen as a supportive rollout because we feel confident that we've been able to clearly communicate, and that's going to play itself out in the first day of school, as I stated before, through school assemblies with students. We're going to have this consistent communication with families, and families, again, I want you to feel comfortable and free in sharing with me some feedback that your child is coming home and sharing with you. We are creating constant opportunities for students to communicate with their classroom teachers. And then, of course, their classroom teachers will share with the school counselor, social worker, guidance counselor, and school administrators. And again, this won't be just a struggle for students. There is the same expectation of adults as well. Adults will also be expected to follow this procedure. The last scenario we want is a student kind of like voicing, why do we have to do this as students, but the adults, I see them on the phone all the time. And that is a reasonable argument that a student can state. So this is going to be a paradigm shift for everyone. We have alternatives. Again, we don't want students to like have go into this process cold turkey, right? So let's say in the cafeteria, soon we will be receiving orders of chess, checkers, Connect Four, and backgammon, so that students will have something alternative to do in the classroom, in the cafeteria or in non-instructional places, because we don't want them being idle doing absolutely nothing. In the previous year or years, students had access to their electronic device, and oftentimes you would walk around the cafeteria or in non-instructional places and you would see them on their phones. They would be playing games. We want students to transition away from these cell phones and transition to meaningful games that challenge them strategically, and work on cognitive skills through these games. We're looking to replace the games, or excuse me, replace the cell phones with these games. And again, we're looking to be transparent throughout the course of the school year and expect a lot of communication to come through my weekly communication, and of course through Parent Square.
I have a few questions that have come in.
Yes, I see that there are a number of questions that have come in, and let me see if I can pull them up.
I can read the first to you.
Sure, go ahead, Ross.
It says, my husband and I decided we do not want to send our son to school with his phone. Do I need to send a letter?
Great question. The question was, parents have a concern of, I don't want to send my child to school with their phone. Do I need to send a letter? And the answer is no. That is a parental choice. You do not need to send a letter confirming that you are indeed sending your child to school without their cell phone. That is perfectly fine.
This was covered a little bit. Once again, what is the communication protocol to parents if there is a security/school-wide emergency at the school? How will parents be informed?
Okay, so any sort of emergency that would take place in school, nothing will change. Emergencies are communicated to our learning community through Parent Square. So should there be an emergency, school administrators and school officials in the specific building will manage it. And in many times, the communication will come out of district office through a Parent Square communication.
Here's another question. Would you welcome donation of Uno card decks?
Oh, absolutely. If you are willing to make an Uno card deck to the games that we're going to have in the cafeteria, absolutely. We will embrace and accept that. So whoever you are, parent, thank you so much. We appreciate your contribution.
The last question. Are there any other questions? Raise a hand or submit a question through the chat.
Are there any other questions? You could raise your hand and or submit a question to the chat. In the event of an emergency, most children will prioritize
retrieving their phone instead of leaving the premises. How will you handle that?
Yes, students could probably become very possessive over their phone, feeling the need to reach out to a family member in an emergency. I would like to think that a student being escorted away from a dangerous situation during an emergency evacuation, leaving our building, I would hope that they would not feel so connected to their cell phone to feel the need to go back to a dangerous situation to retrieve it. We don't want students doing that at all. And also, families, please understand, we want one stream of communication coming out of our building. If we get various different streams of a student calling their family to report misinformation or partial information, that is going to become very disruptive to the work that our emergency responders are engaged in to communicate effectively to our learning community. Because what will happen is that student will, let's say they're successful running back into the building to get their phone. They come out and partially communicate misinformation. Undoubtedly and invariably, that communication is going to trickle off to other people. That information is then going to overwhelm district office and the people who are effectively trying to communicate with the learning community of the Valley Stream, South, North, Central, and Memorial learning community. It would not be fair to the work that we're trying to accomplish in making sure that parents are getting accurate information about the emergency.
This next question comes from Mark Santamaria. Could you unmute and ask the question, please?
Yes, this is Manuel. This is Mark's dad. So the only question that I have is I noticed that sometimes teachers communicate to the students through Teams, and most of the times they will get the communication while they're on their Chromebooks. But if they aren't not on their Chromebooks, they will get the communications through their phones because their phones are hooked up through Teams. So like another teacher would try to communicate with my son through Teams, and he would get the notification on his phone and then be able to respond on his Chromebook. And most of the time, sometimes these students are not on their Chromebooks the whole time. So it seems that, not that it's a flaw, but it seems that they would have to kind of log into their Chromebook and carry it around to see if there's any type of communications between clubs, between the teachers, trying to communicate with the students. So I'm just wondering, is there a way, like how would that process work out since they don't have their phones? It seems that they're going to rely a lot more on their Chromebooks for any kind of communications within the school, within the teachers, within the clubs, if you understand what I'm trying to get at.
I do, I do. There was a high level of security and affirmation and receiving this information rather quickly because the
Mhm.
student had their cell phone. We totally appreciate your question and understand it wholeheartedly. Um, Unfortunately, there's not another intermediary thing that's going to like replace that cell phone, right? So if
Mhm.
we're
Mhm.
so if we're doing away with the cell phone, the
Right.
only other thing the student has to kind of like resort to will be the one-to-one device, their Chromebook.
Right.
So yes, it'll probably be inconvenient. It'll probably be different, to
Right.
constantly like open up their Chromebook to see if my teacher communicated with me.
Mhm.
But at this point, that is probably the best that we're going to be able to do.
Yeah, no, I understand. Cause like sometimes like his coach, would sit there and say you have to be at this time, be at, he would have to take like let's say the shuttle bus to Central, right? Because it's
Yes.
so they would sit there and send some information during the school hours, and he would have to wait until after school or when he logs in, and most of the times he's not even on his Chromebook during, in most of the classes, only when they use the Chromebook and they open them up to use the notes and stuff like that. So that's, he might have to wait until after school and kind of open up his Chromebook or get to his phone to see if there's any type of communication or any type of messages that are left. So
No
I mean,
question
that's the
about
only
it.
thing I kind of see, that it's a good thing that they're kind of putting their phones and they're shying away from it, but a lot of communication will be kind of missed, and it might be hard for teachers to communicate with the students during the school. So that's the only flaw that I see.
Yeah, totally understandable. Totally understandable. And again, I'm taking notes this evening, and um, who knows? Perhaps a year from now, after the state, compiles and data gathers all the information, and we disaggregate it, or rather they disaggregate it. Maybe this will change next year this time. But unfortunately,
Right.
for the start of the 25-26 school year, I totally hear you loud and clear, and that makes sense. It totally makes
Right.
sense.
The only
Next question comes to us from Joseph Salem. And Joseph Salem, if you could unmute your microphone and ask your question.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Swinson.
Good
I do
evening.
have actually two questions. I have two questions. I do have a child on 504, and what paperwork do we need in case, my child needs to reach out to us and, just to have not the phone, maybe a smartwatch, or I'm just saying, like, what, it needs to reach us out. Do
What
we need
grade is
any
your child in?
paperwork, or I'm sorry, in
What?
eighth grade?
Okay, so it's likely Ms. Keeley already has this information. So there are students that will be arriving to our building in which we're already aware that this is a need of theirs. So it's this scenario is an exception, right? This is an exception. And the communication devices that you use and that your child used will not change. And the reason
Will
why it
not
won't
change.
change is
Okay.
because your child has an IEP or a 504.
Got it. Okay.
Okay,
I understand. My
sure.
second question is, I do have an older child who's old. Often he loses his ID, or he forgets it home. How it's the safety, in a locker now, because they cannot, they're not allowed to use the cell phones. They store gym equipment and, personal items. How we ensure the safety that nobody else is going to access their locker?
Well, we have a new set of lockers that are being installed in our building. Um, but if your child loses or misplaces their school ID, not only will they not be able to get into it, but no one will be able to get into it. But if it sounds like your concern may be if your child loses their school ID, that perhaps somebody could use it to get into their locker. Is that what you're
Correct.
saying? Okay.
Correct.
Well,
Yes.
a couple of things, right? And that's a great question. Well, number one, we hope that they don't, right? And we hope that your
I know.
child, is working on being very, very like responsible and holding on to their school ID. But we have a building here that's stretched north, south, east, and west with video cameras, and hopefully our video camera system is enough of a deterrent to like keep kids from taking things that don't belong to them. That's a great question, and we're hoping that it doesn't happen. But there's no way of us guaranteeing that's saying, hey, if any child misplaces their school ID, that we can prevent somebody else from picking it up, getting to their locker, and possibly taking something. We hope that they don't. We hope that
We
they
do
don't,
hope, but
right? But we want students to kind of like feel the urgency to work on their level of responsibility to have their school ID on their person all the time.
I do. I understand, and we hope that too. But okay, well, I
But
know
then
it's
here's the other thing that that we want to be aware of as well, is that should your child misplace their school ID, they have to report it to the main office as soon as possible so we can deactivate it.
right. Like when they go to the gym and they changing, or they, I don't know, they taking off the hoodie, or
Right. If it's deactivated,
that
even
was
if
my
somebody,
question.
right. So even if it's deactivated, somebody finding it and expecting to use it, that's not going to work.
Okay, so it has to be in person, reported. Cannot be something done online and send an email and say,
That is
listen,
correct. You have to physically
Okay.
come to the main
Okay.
office to report it.
Okay.
The next question comes from Natasha Moore. If you could unmute your microphone and ask your question, Ms. Moore.
Yes, good evening. The question I have is with regards to the older children that do go out to lunch, and let's say they had the phone and upon returning, as well as kids that arrive to school early, because I looked at the time frame. Do they have like a grace period to get that phone to their locker back in time, or if it's found on their person, would they be penalized even though they're not using it? Let's say you came back from the pizza place just in time for class.
I mean, if a student's running a little bit behind schedule and they're now
Right.
contemplating, hey, should I walk into the classroom with my cell phone, or should I like detour to my locker first to put it away? We always want them to detour to their locker and put it away. There'll be a grace period. The last thing administrators and or adults want to do is consume a lot of their time with talking about consequencing students, or actually consequencing students for something that's easily fixable. I would rather be late and put my cell phone away than to go to the classroom and have my phone confiscated. So we get it that sometimes people run a little bit late, but ideally we want to be consistent that the cell phone must be stored in your locker.
And does the same thing go for if they arrive to school early, like before they have time to go to the locker? Say there are some days, let's say my child goes to extra help early, he has to arrive there for 7. I think usually is the time.
Yes. Yeah, just stop by your locker and put the phone away.
Okay.
This question comes from Rina Kasim. If you could unmute your microphone and ask your question, please.
Hi, my question is that I do like the policy of taking away the cell phone, and I am going to constantly say this. Is our main office going to be manned appropriately and properly to answer parents when they call if there's an emergency for their children? Because I'm gonna have an 11th grader and a 7th grader in the school, and sometimes you call and the messages don't get to the children. So that is going to be a really big it's going to be really important that we are able to leave a message for our children and hoping that our children get that message.
Yeah, well, we're hoping, we know that there's going to be a honeymoon period to all of this, right? There are systems that are going to have to be set up and put into place. And sometimes we may not know that a system needs to be set up until we have an uncomfortable experience about something that we necessarily didn't consider at the onset of the process, right? So things will revise and change and look differently as the days and weeks progress throughout the school year. But to answer your question, yes, you will have, we have 2 staff members in the main office. We have 4 in attendance. We have a staff in the guidance suite. So there are lots of adults to manage to manage all these incoming phone calls. And again, as I stated earlier, we know that this is going to be a huge paradigm shift, but we have an all hands on deck approach to responding to the needs of our families and, of course, our students.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next question is here from the chat. Question is, can the students have the phones in their bag and off? And also, are girls allowed to wear tote bags?
Again, we have to stay consistent with this. We do not see what happens when you say yes to a student having a phone turned off in their bag. Always what happens is what the student does is they bring the phone out in the classroom, the teacher responds to it, and then, or the teacher doesn't respond to it because they may not see it, but other students see it. Now we've spread the word in the classroom that I could get away with this. I just have to be clever and crafty and sneaky about it. And the next thing you know, you got 4 or 5 kids doing that. So we really are aiming to start the school year off being disciplined to this, being consistent with this new policy, and just being a rule follower to these new policies. So we're asking that the students house their phones in their new lockers.
Also from the chat, is my 10th grader able to use her phone outside on school premises during lunchtime?
Yes, 10th through 12th graders are allowed to leave the building. And at that time, they can take their phones and they are to use their phones outside of the building.
Next question is from Veronica Matthew. If you could unmute your microphone and ask the question, please.
Good evening. I had a question regarding the lockers and the IDs. I just wanted to know, like, if they did lose their ID, is there a locker number on their ID so that if someone found it, they could identify the locker, or would they have to know the person in their locker to kind of know that?
No.
Okay, so that's good to know.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next question is going to come from Jeremiah Reeves. If you could unmute your microphone and ask your question, please.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My question is, knowing that my son and and some of the other students might be on some form of athletic team, like the soccer or the football, and parents have chosen not to give their child a cell phone to take to school. I was just wondering, knowing that they travel sometimes, going away to play these games and coming back to the school for pickup, I was wondering, is there anything that could be put in place that a notification could come home to parents to say, we're 5 minutes away or 10 minutes away to pick up your child? Because I know he would not have his cell phone. Or I don't know if the coach could send a text to parents. Anything like that could possibly be put in place for us that has chosen not to give our child a cell phone.
Right. I believe that coaches are already communicating in this manner with students and their parents. I do know that some coaches have a specialized group chat or group text that goes to students and to student athletes and their parents. So we'll make sure that we make note of that so that parents are being communicated from their child's coach. But
Thank
just
you.
keep in mind, again, the cell phone ban is only from 7:50 to 2:43. But again, if you're a parent that chooses not to hand off your phone to your child before they go to school, then obviously they're not going to have it all day. And then, there'll be another option for coaches to communicate with parents, and that'll be through that group chat or the group text.
The next question comes from an account called Pereira. If you don't mind unmuting and asking your question, please.
Hi, my question is, my son is in special ed, and he always gets in trouble, believe it or not. And he gets a minute late to classes sometimes where the teacher, put him in timeout or suspension. So, with this phone being taken away and all that, I'm just a little bit nervous because he needs it. I don't support his cell phone not being accessible to them during class because he needs it. How do I take care of this where I give him something during the day? He's shut himself off, and then the teacher will let me know, and then I will send him a nice text. Hey, I know it's hard. Just put it aside and focus on your class. And I communicate with him that way to help him out through the day. So I'm a little bit nervous about not being able to reach out to him during the day, and the teachers are really strict if they're a minute late for class. Sometimes they write them up. It's on the report card. So is the teacher going to be working with these kids with all these new things going on, not having a cell phone or communication? Because my
Right.
son,
So
sometimes he lost track of time. It's knowing with him, like he never pay attention to time, and he's always in trouble.
right. Well, as I stated before, we're not looking to create a confrontational environment and an environment of stress or duress for our students or their families. Our teachers have been prepped since March and April, and they've been very much attentive to the news coming down from New York State Ed Department and this new policy coming out of Governor Hochul's office. Our teachers are going to approach this with grace, mercy, and consideration because developmentally, we understand that students are going to be struggling with this new shift. We get this. Our kids, we want to make sure they are arriving in a school that supports them, that affirms their experiences, that respects them, and that we are responding to their needs in a developmentally appropriate way. And that's the mantra that all of the adults in our building are going to live with, and we're going to abide by, and we're going to commit ourselves to with our students and their families. We're not looking to give students detention. We know this is going to be a honeymoon period to all this. And the work that we do is going to reflect that grace, mercy, and consideration that we're going to allow our students. We're not looking to slam kids. That's not how you engage students to teach them how to manage this addictive thing that we've all grown so comfortable in using and being a part of over the last X number of years.
Next question from the chat. Are students allowed to bring tote bags, or does bag have to be a drawstring bag?
So we are still finalizing that detail, and that will go out in an email through, or at least coming out of South High School, because I want to make sure before I commit to answering that question that I'm on the same page as Memorial, Central, and North. So my goal is to send out a letter to my South families either tomorrow or Monday morning. I just want to double check with my colleagues from the other buildings to make sure we're all speaking the same language.
These next two questions are related, so I'll ask them together. Are students able to text parents during after-school activities? For example, letting parents know what time they need to be picked up from school? And the second question, what about after-school activities in school premises and clubs and extra help? Are they allowed to have their phone with them, or the same policies during the school day still apply after school?
The policy only reflects 7:50 in the morning till 2:43, instructional periods. Students are allowed to have their phones after school and bring them to their event, bring them to their club or activity. It's only through instructional periods 1 through 9, 7:50 to 2:43.
Next question comes again from Joseph Salem. You can unmute. Yep.
I'm
thank you.
sorry, I got interrupted. In the event that they forgot their ID home, how can they access the locker?
We will give
Are they
them
gonna be
a temporary ID that will allow them to get into their locker. It would only last for 24 hours.
got it? Okay, and we apply we can order a new ID through the school box the same, right?
Yes,
Same way. Okay, got it. Thank you.
you're welcome.
And we have a question here from Bella Guzman. If you could unmute and ask your question. You got muted again. I think we're
Can
good
you hear
now.
me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, sorry. Good evening. The
Good
only thing
evening.
I'm okay with the not using the phone in school. It's a great idea for the kids to learn more. The only thing it's my concern is when we have to pick the kids during school time. Like let's say they have an appointment. Every time I went last year, you have few cardiologist appointment. Every time I go to the school, the security always tell me text your child to come down. So how we gonna manage that part? Even if I send a letter, it's always an issue like picking him up.
Here's what I would do. I would call in advance. Hey, this is Mr. Swinson. I'm on my way to the building to pick up Matt Swinson. We have a cardiologist appointment in 45 minutes. Please make sure he's at the front desk.
Okay, okay, all right. I
Okay?
usually send a letter and call the school, but not with a 20 or 40 minutes before. But it's always an issue like with the security guards.
Understood. I totally understand. But again, that will be another system that we're going to institute where we
Okay,
probably would be easier if the parent called in advance because I
all
get
right.
it, you know, so parents get charged at certain offices if you're late and you don't
Yeah,
or you miss the appointment because your child is like being released from school a little bit later and there's another 10 or 15 minutes added on to plus you got to now travel to the doctor's office. I get it. So we want to be very respectful and cognizant of your schedule and get your child out of the classroom and be ready for you by the time you pull up into the parking lot.
all right. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
This next question from the chat. If we have board games to donate, where should we bring them?
You can bring them to the main office at South High School.
This is the last of our questions. Are there any others?
Parents, if you have no more questions, but after this meeting, something strikes you, please put it in an email and send it to me, and I will respond.
Here comes one from L. Weiner. You could unmute to ask the question.
Good evening. I'm sorry if this was addressed earlier, but would items like MP3 players that are not internet enabled be allowed during lunch periods?
That has not come up before. MP3 players. I want to get clarification on that before I make a commitment. Because that is not, an MP3 player is not an internet, it's not an internet device, internet connected device.
Thank you.
So yes, I will check in with you. I will check in with district leadership and I will get back to you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
The next question comes to us from Natasha Moore. If you could unmute your microphone again.
Hi, Mr. Swinson. While this was informative, there's probably several other parents that, what for some reason or another, might not have been able to turn on. Was this recorded so like we could share it? Like the PTSA might be able to share it, or Parents Club might be able to share it.
Yes, yes.
Can a copy of the link or something be able to be sent to the parent organization? And we'll
Absolutely.
share it.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Here is another question from Mr. Santa Maria. I'll unmute your microphone again if you could do the likewise.
Yes, hi, Mr. Swinson. So this is probably the second question, and it kind of seems that most parents are not really upset about they're more upset about not being able to communicate with their students or get some type of communication from their student. They're not really concerned about the students putting their phones away. So I would suggest, like my son kind of suggested, is there a way that they could put some type of app on Teams where they could send out what when they log into their Chromebook, maybe send a message to one parent or one emergency contact, and at least they could, like the parent or whoever's that emergency contract contact could sit there and get a message or send a message to the Chromebook. And basically, I would think a lot of parents would probably feel relieved that at least they have some form instead of calling the school and trying to get a message to the student. Maybe something that could be an app that could you could send a message to the Chromebook and the Chromebook back to the parent. So this way, they're not on their
Hmm.
phones, they're not looking through the internet, they're not on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, but it's just a form of communication between student, and parent. So I'm just thinking like some type of app or maybe something through Teams, that some type of communication could be sent out.
You know, that's a great point. I'd have to check in with district office and Steve Caruso to see where we are, like legally being able to put something like that on the Chromebook.
Hmm.
I'm sure I'm sure there's a policy or something that we have to be careful in doing that.
Right.
I just have to check in with him, but that's a great point. That's a great point to
Right.
bring
That's the
up, and I
only thing
appreciate
I
it.
think a lot of parents will feel more comfortable with their students putting their phone away, but at least since they have their Chromebook and they could sit there and send out some quick message, or let's say some parents feel that that their students having some issues or some problems and they need to reach out to their parent to sit there and feel better, and the parent could send a message back saying calm down. I think that's probably the issue with a lot of the parents.
Right. We kind of like built that into the process in which we're instituting, which
Mhm.
is, again, if a child feels that level of anxiety or duress, the
Mhm.
student can ask to be, let out of class to go see the school counselor
Right. But that's
or to the,
understandable.
yeah. And so that, they'll have that intimate space where they can engage their parents through a phone call in an office,
Right. I mean, but like
right?
I said, it's the whole process. You have to ask the teacher. You have to go to the guidance counselor,
I
and
understand.
sometimes it's just a message being sent through the Chromebook, like you would to your teacher or the teacher to the student, and while they're logged in on the Chromebook or student to student. So that's the only thing I would suggest is maybe some type of app. You know.
Okay. All right. I'll check in with district office and IT.
Last question I see in the chat, are students still allowed to wear watches?
Students are allowed to wear watches, just so long as they're not internet connected to the internet.
Here's one from Ella Guzman, if you would unmute, please.
Yeah, my question was the second was the Apple Watch. My son usually goes with an Apple Watch, so I guess he's not allowed to use it either, right?
That is correct. That's considered a smartwatch, and a
All
smartwatch is
right.
off limits.
All right. Thanks a lot.
You're very welcome. And again, families, please know that we will probably repeat this same conversation with your child upon the first couple of days of school, because like I said before, we want to get this communication out early and often to our students so that they are informed, they are educated, and now they know how to like make adjustments with this information that they have.
I see one more hand raised with the name Pereira. Please unmute.
Yeah, I'm just curious, is the school staff ready for all these phone calls and take messages and get it delivered in time?
Well, I don't know if they're going to be ready for all these phone calls, because again, this is are you speaking about our, the
So
secretaries
we
in the
have an
office?
emergency. Yeah, like you have over what 1,200 kids in school, right? Nobody
Yes.
uses cell phone anymore. There's going to be excess amount of phone call, I'm sure. Is the school prepared for this? Like, is the message going to get delivered in time? How do you walk over to the classroom? How is this going to work?
Yeah, so we're really confident that the processes that we're setting up will work. Now, will there be some moments of will there be a snafu here or there? Probably. It's going to be a new system that we're going to be living and operating under, as if there are all snafus and probably some shortcomings with new systems, right? Again, this is a honeymoon
Right.
period. It's going to be new for all schools throughout the state of New York. And that's why we're going to capture data throughout the process so we can go back and share it at the end of the year and look at that data and revise it and revise the
Right.
process that we instituted. But I don't know if, from what I'm hearing from other schools and other school leaders, yes, there's a little bit of trepidation going into this, but it seems like from what I'm hearing is that in the beginning there's this anxiety, like, okay, oh my goodness, it's a new system. How am I going to communicate? But it then tends to kind of level down, and things just end up working out. So will that be reflected here? I hope so. I truly hope
Right.
so.
I mean, it is kind of, I mean, in the first new changes, everybody getting nervous. But I mean, there are times when I called and, okay, you need to speak to such and such, and then you get a voicemail, you know what I mean? So that's the kind of my concern.
Yeah, and
Like,
you
is
know
the
what? I
school
will
really prepared?
And I will be sure that on the first day of school, when I have my back to school meeting with my colleagues, to like make sure that they are hyper vigilant in checking their voice messages and responding more quickly, or responding quickly to parent inquiries and parent messages.
Okay.
Here's one question now from Stacy Levy. I will ask you to unmute and then you can go ahead.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
I just wanted to say I'll probably be sending in a Math 24 game as an addition to games. That's a really good game. I'm an educator myself,
Oh,
and just as
wonderful.
a
Thank you.
yes, 24 is a really great one. And just to the parents and families, I think we all just have to be patient with the process. Think back to when we were in school, we didn't have phones. It's a process you have to be patient with the children. They're going to learn over time. And we have to just be reasonable with the staff and patient with them as well, because like it has been repeatedly saying, it's a process. It's going to be a little uncomfortable, but it's a process. They're going to be fine. The school's interest is your child's safety as well, and I think we just have to be a little bit patient with the whole process.
I want to thank you so much for those words of encouragement and support. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That was our last question.
Are you sure? I'll give 3 more minutes. I know we're moving into probably 7 to 10 minutes over the time frame, but I can definitely stick around for another 3 minutes if you have any questions. If not, like I stated earlier, please feel free to email me and I will respond to your email.
There's more one more time.
Hi, Ms. Moore.
Is there a handout or a little brochure also available that we could share with parents regarding the
Um,
rules?
There is not a brochure at this point. We've got about, what is this? Today is the 21st, so we've got 12 more days until the start of school. And district office is working on some documentation that we can share with families.
All right, we'll wait
I
and
will
see.
I will
Thank you.
most likely include some portion of this in my Parent Square communication that I send out either tomorrow or Monday.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Well, South families, I want to thank you for your loyalty and your commitment and your stick-to-itiveness for being a part of this informative session from 6 o'clock until now 7:10. As I stated earlier, again, if something sparks your interest and you think of it after this is over, again, please email me and I will respond by the end of the weekend or throughout the weekend to get this information back to you as quickly as possible. We would like you to let your son, let your daughter know that things will be fine and that they will be able to experience the growing up that you had and that I had and that probably all the adults that were part of this tonight had. And that would be a learning experience where we left and went to school and came home, and we didn't have the luxury of our cell phones. but yet we managed. We forged through, and we forged through with in a way in which we were unscathed, and we are stronger because of it. Just know that this policy coming from New York State Ed and instituted by, of course, Governor Hochul is an instrument, is a policy that is designed to respond to the needs of our students. And this is work that is going to be good for all students. So again, I thank you for being a part of this session tonight, and I look forward to introducing myself and meeting you in the, throughout the course of the school year. There'll be a parent orientation next week. So feel free to come on up, and I look forward to seeing you. Have a wonderful evening.